On Monday, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro signed a decree to create a national cybersecurity council to deal with cyber attacks in the country. In Cuba and around the world, people pay homage to Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro on his 98th birth anniversary. Russia and Palestine assess the escalation of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Monday, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro signed a decree to create a national cybersecurity council to deal with cyber attacks in the country. During the Defense and State Council that took place on the same day with members of the military high command and the executive cabinet, the head of state said that the measure seeks to guarantee the liberation and protection of all the country's technological command systems. He added that all institutions, public and private, must be freed and vaccinated against cybernetic warfare. In the same session, Jorge Rodriguez, President of the National Assembly, said that the Parliament will discuss a package of reforms to regulate the use of social media in the country, a measure that is also advancing in other nations of the world. The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro said that his government is a defender of the United Nations Charter.
We are persevering defenders of the United Nations Charter, and we believe in the United Nations system, but a United Nations system that upholds international law, the right of the people, the right to peace, the right to independence, not interventionism.
Also, the Executive Vice President of Venezuela denounced that the acts of vandalism that took place in the country after the presidential elections were a consequence of the irresponsible calls of the opposition María Corina Machado and the former presidential candidate Mundo González.
Hechos que se produjeron a raíz del llamado irresponsable y violento.
The events that took place as a result of the irresponsible and violent call of the violent activist María Corina Machado and that of the former candidate Edmundo González Urrutia resulted in crimes against the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the violation of fundamental rights of Venezuelans, such as the right to life, the right to personal integrity, the right to property, and the right to diversity, which constitutes, as stated by the Attorney General of the Republic, hate crimes, that were also committed on July 29, 30, 1 and 2 of August, in joint work with the Prosecutor's General Office. We have as a balance of the lethal victims, fatalities, 22 people whose cases have been duly substantiated.
In addition, the Attorney General of Venezuela pointed out the seriousness of the hate crimes committed against the people of Venezuela by persecuting and attacking citizens for their political ideology.
No solamente el delito o la instigación a un delito de odio, sino el crimen de odio, que es la...
Not only the crime or instigation to a hate crime, but the hate crime that is the materialization of the murder. Of course, when a person attacks another person motivated exclusively by their membership or a particular social group. Are violent behaviors motivated by the prejudice towards the person by their sex, race, ethnicity, religion, gender identity, socioeconomic level, nationality, ideology or political affiliation, disability, sexual orientation. In the Venezuelan case, was strictly to persecute and seek to exterminate Chavismo. There is no doubt that is a hate crime in function of attacking and seeking to exterminate people because of their political orientation.
Crimen de odio.
The Venezuelan state continues to investigate the attacks that different websites have been suffering since the election of July 28th. These have affected public institutions and social services of the state. Let's see the details with our correspondent Leonel Retamal.
Even 2 weeks after the presidential elections, Venezuela is still facing cyber attacks, denounced the Minister of Science and Technology. 65% are denial of service attacks, which imply a saturation of websites due to excessive requests for access. During July 28th alone, the authorities denounced that they received 30 million attacks per minute.
When one analyzes the volume of attacks, the sophistication of the attacks, the incidence of attacks, the duration of attacks, this also has to do with an installed technological capacity and with a financial capacity. To attack for an hour, a terabyte of attack, you are financing at least $5,000 for each attack. So we have received 30 million attacks per minute, Mr. President. This means that what is behind the attacks is a great economic and technological power.
At least 20 websites of state-owned platforms and media outlets were attacked. Another 40 are under investigation. The main one has been the state-owned telephone and internet services company CanTV.
So we have a sophistication in the number of attacks, a significant volume in the number of attacks, a significant funding in the number of attacks, and a diversity of attacks, with more than 5 types of attacks targeting the state's technological platforms.
Many of the attacks on the websites affect service pages such as the payment of taxes, the civil identification system, and the Patria system that grants bonds and different services, among others. Even media outlets such as teleSUR were affected.
The big thing is that they are hurting everybody, right? Because, for example, if they attack, what do I know, a state system where any Venezuelan requires it, that person is being affected by the enemies of the homeland, regardless of the ideology of that person.
In response to these attacks, a national cybersecurity council will be created to develop defense strategies and legal developments on the subject.
Monday, Foreign Minister of Venezuela, Ivan Gil, rejected the statements of the White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre, in which she granted that the alleged tally sheets published by the far right are true. The Foreign Minister assured that the coup operation planned and directed from the U.S. has no limits. Now Karine Jean-Pierre, spokesperson for the White House, proclaims herself electoral authority in Venezuela. The reality is that all her answers obey well-paid lobbyists. All the questions and comments in the pantomime of the press briefing are paid off, framed in a great conspiracy against Venezuela. All Venezuelans wonder who is paying for this, which their funds are financing this operation, replied Ms. Jean-Pierre. Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday, August 13th, people around the world pay homage to Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro on his 98th birth anniversary. In Cuba, citizens carry out different activities to honor Fidel Castro's work and legacy. Early in the morning, people from across the country gather at the Santa Efigenia Cemetery to lay a wreath of flowers to the grave where Fidel's ashes rest. In other parts of the world, citizens also pay tribute to Fidel's actions in the fight for a more equal and peaceful world. In China, Fidel's contributions to biotechnology were acknowledged. The Union of Cuban Residents in Argentina highlighted the example of the historic leader of the revolution and have been carrying out different activities since Sunday to honor the day. Celebrations alike were also held in other areas such as Russia, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Vietnam, and many others. And Venezuela joined the day of homage dedicated to Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro. In an official statement, the Bolivarian nation celebrates with revolutionary fervor the 98th anniversary of the birth of Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro Cruz, remembering his rebellious thinking inspired by Martís and Bolívar's ideas. The legacy of Commander Fidel Castro has transcended the history of our America and the world, and today continues to be one of the main inspirations that allow us to move in the midst of battles in favor of humanity with commitment and strength to defeat any difficulty. From Venezuela, we join the sentiments of the Cuban people, its President Miguel Díaz-Canel and Army General Raúl Castro, certain that the socialist revolution undertaken by the immortal Commander Fidel will continue to be the beacon of dignity for all those who aspire to build a better, just and non-interfering world. In this context also, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America's People's Trade Treaty commemorated Fidel Castro's legacy. On social media, posted the peoples of the Alba TCP commemorate the 98th anniversary of the birth of Commander Fidel Castro, historic leader of the Cuban Revolution, who traveled a long road to achieve the liberation of Cuba and defend the sovereignty of his country that was under the tyranny of the U.S. Empire. Fidel began a reference for the peoples in their processes of struggle and liberation from capitalist oppression and the expansionist and predatory pretensions of imperialism. The historic leader of the Cuban Revolution was an advocate of Latin American integration to confront imperialism. As faith to his view, we invite you to listen to a fragment of a speech by Fidel Castro during his visit to Caracas on January 23, 1959.
Estos pueblos de América saben que su fuerza interna está en la unión y que su fuerza continental está también en la unión. Hay que unirse cada vez más, hay que estrechar cada vez más los lazos de pueblo a pueblo, y a eso he venido a Venezuela, a traer un mensaje no de casta o de grupo, sino un mensaje de pueblo a pueblo.
In other news, on Monday, Uruguay headed the 7th meeting of the Mercosur-China dialogue mechanism to strengthen ties between nations. The meeting was held in the Uruguayan capital of Montevideo with the objective of reaching a free trade agreement with China. For his part, Uruguay's Deputy Foreign Minister, Nicolás Albertoni, presented investment proposals aimed at relaxing Mercosur rules to open the bloc to the world and meet its own expectations of trade openness. The Peruvian Public Ministry assures that the law on crimes against humanity and war crimes enacted by Congress violates the defense of human rights and the autonomy and independence of judges. The Public Prosecutor's Office assures that the law will have a negative impact on the processing of judicial processes, in particularly serious cases such as Madre Mia, Umaya, and Galvan Borja, among others. They also refer that the new law violates the autonomy and functional independence of the magistrates, since it prevents the prosecutor's office from exercising its function as defender of legality and prosecutor of the crime. The firm also warns of the negative consequences that the law will have on the exercise of prosecutors. Meanwhile, in the United States, the team of the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris claimed that Elon Musk is using his social media X to control the country's democracy. Harris' campaign team denounced that billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk ruined X by allowing hate speech and disinformation to flood the platform. They further claimed that Musk is now using his fortune and broad scope to try to take over U.S. democracy. The billionaire held a live interview with former President Donald Trump on X, which was followed by over 1 million users. Russia President Vladimir Putin met with his Palestinian counterpart Mahmoud Abbas to join efforts for a ceasefire and to provide aid to Gaza. On the meeting, both leaders discussed the situation in the Middle East, and despite its special military operation in Ukraine, Russia is willing to support Palestine, though the head of state affirms that it cannot be dismissed. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said that the United Nations failed to guarantee the human rights of the Palestinians in the face of the situation of Israeli aggression after the U.S. pressure. Putin further stressed that they will always advocate a peaceful solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The United Nations claims Israel continues to block crucial humanitarian aid missions to Gaza. According to the multilateral organization, Israel has denied access to the Palestinian enclave to more than one-third of the aid missions since the beginning of August. The UN Security Council calls Tel Aviv's decision a continuing cycle of deprivation and distress for the Palestinian population devastated by the genocidal operation. According to the latest UN report of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, 198 people were killed and 430 injured in Israeli attacks in less than 72 hours, and adds that the blockade of coordinated aid undermines efforts to address urgent humanitarian needs. The Israeli regime bombed several towns in southern Lebanon with internationally banned white phosphorus munitions. Israeli aircraft fired on the outskirts of several residential areas in the Lebanese territories. The health ministry reported that at least 3 civilians were wounded in the attack. The Lebanese authorities denounced that the attacks by Tel Aviv, which have intensified since October 2023, against southern Lebanon have caused more than 100,000 people to be displaced. In this regard, they assured that they maintain diplomatic lines with Israel and international organizations to stop the violations committed by the occupation and to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. The acting Prime Minister of Lebanon, Najib Mikati, confirmed that all relevant ministries, departments and organizations have taken measures within the framework of the National Emergency Plan to deal with the Israeli aggressions. In this regard, he emphasized the need for de-escalation to avoid a spiral of violence and the decisive role of the international community. He also recalled that the only way out of the conflict is the implementation of the Security Council's Resolution 701, which establishes the freedom and sovereignty of Lebanon within its internationally recognized borders. We now have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. Greece is hit by heavy fires and extreme weather conditions. On Monday, the fire claimed its first fatality north of the country's capital. While authorities reported that the body of a 62-year-old woman was found in a store razed by the flames. The victim's acquaintances cannot explain why she waited until the last minute before leaving the store. The fire that hit the Attica region broke out on Sunday in the vicinity of Lake Marathon and has spread, raising several houses and establishments in its path. The European Union Monitoring Service has raised the number of hectares burned to more than 10,000. A 5.5 earthquake has been reported in the Syrian province of Hama. At least 25 people have been injured. According to the health director of the region, Maher Younes, the victims suffered minor and medium injuries. Panic and fainting spells were also reported, especially in the city of Salameh, the closest city to the epicenter of the strong tremor. The quake struck at 11:56 local time, with its epicenter 28 kilometers east of the city of Hama, according to the Syrian National Earthquake Center. Authorities in Damascus, Latakia, and other provinces where the quake was felt said that no major damages has been reported. Tropical storm Nestor is approaching the Lesser Antilles with sustained winds of 40 km per hour and westward movement at 20 km per hour. According to the U.S. National Hurricane Center, at 5 a.m., Ernesto was about 350 miles southeast of San Juan. The phenomenon is expected to reach Puerto Rico on Tuesday evening, and rainfalls will be between 3 to 6 inches, with a maximum of 10 inches. Experts forecast that the storm could make a west-northward movement with some decrease in forward speed. On Monday, the Austral sailing ship of the non-governmental organization Open Arms rescued 187 migrants in several rescue operations in the central Mediterranean. Since last August 9th, the organization has been carrying out rescue work. According to figures from the Italian migration authorities, 421 migrants had reached the island of Lampedusa in just 24 hours as of Friday. In the midst of this new wave of migration, Open Arms has been involved in 6 operations, including the distribution of hydration and life jackets to migrants who have managed to reach the island in precarious boats. In one of the rescue missions, they saved the lives of 55 people from Tunisia, including children and babies in high-risk conditions. In Spain, citizens protested against mass tourism on the Spanish island of Mallorca. Residents of the island of Mallorca symbolically occupied a section of Bayerman Beach to protest against the consequences of mass tourism in the territory. The island is part of the Balearic Archipelago, one of the most touristic regions of the country, where the tourism sector causes socio-economic and ecological problems. In this context, demonstration is added to others that have been presented this year in other Spanish cities against mass tourism. A resident of Mohammadpur went to court to file criminal charges against the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, for the wave of violence on the riots. The Prime Minister resigned and left the country while violence and tensions raised on the streets. Therefore, citizens resorted to justice to denounce the murder of the owner of a grocery store with whom he has a family relationship. The victim was killed by an armed attack. Besides Prime Minister Hasina, the Secretary General of the Awami League Party, the former Home Minister, and the Inspector General of Police are further being accused. This is the first case opened before the Bangladesh judiciary against the former Prime Minister who moved to India on August 5th this year. On Monday evening, five-time Olympic champion Mijaín López highlighted athletes' commitment to the Cuban people and commemoration of Fidel Castro's birth anniversary.
And with our Inder president's permission, I told him I wasn't willing to read a communique, as I want to say from the bottom of my heart what I feel for my country, for my people who loves me. We are already at home. All the athletes who went with a unique mission that of fighting for our medals to reaffirm we are the best in the world. And we are happy to get here and represent our people, today, tomorrow, and ever. I won my 5th medal. I am retiring, but I will work on our continuity, so that all our Cuban athletes continue fighting for victory and continue giving joy to our Cuban people. So I ask for a round of applause on behalf of the birth anniversary of our undefeated Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro Ruds.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.